A lot of the Navy boys put their names in the wet concrete. Like there's one here for a CG Stewart.
Well, it was 1944. How old would we have been?
Oh, that's about 14, I think.
Then Mum and Dad had to find a place for us in Apollo Bay to board so we could go to school. And we used to get a ride to Apollo Bay on a Sunday afternoon with 2 army men in their utility. And of course the ocean road was, well, the road from here to Apollo Bay was wicked in those days, unmade, corrugated, muddy, crept around the hills. Everybody used to be nearly sick. Once when we were supposed to come home with the army boys, they either got us or something happened. And the man where we were boarding, he used to work at the Kennet River in the timber mills or something. Yeah. And he used to ride his bike up there to work and come back at the weekends, and we didn't have a ride home. And he said to Doug, "Oh, you can take my bike and ride out if you like." So Doug and I, me being dinked and Doug pedalling, rode all the way on that corrugated road right out here in the middle of the night.
And people weren't sort of allowed in here, really.
No, well, only relatives could come here. It wasn't until the war finished that people started to trickle in to have a look around the place, but it was forbidden because it was Commonwealth property and it was off limits.
Well, mostly went over the cliff bit below the lighthouse and fishing, crayfishing off the rocks. And rabbiting, we used to go rabbiting, didn't we?
Yeah,
rabbiting. And that was about it, I think. Roamed around the place and made a general nuisance of ourselves.
Yeah, we used to go down to the beach below the lighthouse. You could go down the track there, then you could walk around at low tide or sometimes high tide. You could walk around the bottom here. Or we'd go down to Crayfish Bay, which is a nice beach, little beach down there, and it's encircled with a reef. And we used to swim in there. And
Dad had an old motorbike we used to ride and you couldn't get petrol. And they used to have 44-gallon petrol dumps over there in the hills, and then they had camouflages over the top. I used to sneak over of a night, and the guard would be walking there with the fixed bayonet and the 303. Go over with a piece of rubber hose and a 10-inch and pinch the petrol under the camouflage net.
we used to both make boats out of driftwood.
boats.
Terrible looking things, but we used to make them, you know. Dad had been going berserk. We'd go in and I'd use all his tools, and when we were coming home, he'd hide all his best tools and things away, and he used to say, "You're not using my bloody nails." He said, "Get nails out of the driftwood, get nails out of those boxes there, straighten them out, use them." God. Who's been at my hacksaw? He made me fire a fog rocket once. I nearly had a heart attack. He had to the other head keeper was away or something. There was only him, and he had to do the weather. And the fog rocket had to be fired every 3 minutes or something. I forget now. And he grabbed me and took me down there. And he said, "Look," he said, "pull that strip down there." And he said, "You strike the big match down the side and stand back." Oh crikey! I pulled the strip down, struck this big match on the thing, and it fizzed and nothing happened. Crikey, I nearly had a heart attack. Anyway, all of a sudden she went swish and off she went. Boom.
Yeah, we were born on King Island, and Dad was on Swan Island.
Yeah, well, their first station was Curry, King Island, but I don't know how long they were there. Couldn't have been very long. I would say perhaps a year, if that. Because Doug was born in 1929 and Mum went home from Swan Island so he could be born. She did the same with me when we were at Swan Island, and I was born on King Island, but she went home to her parents and then back to the island.
And my mother and father were born on King Island as well. And she was married young at 17, and then she just became a housewife on the lighthouses, which is...
Worked as hard as Dad, really.
Yeah, we thought it was great, but when you get older you're thinking later life, for a woman it wasn't much of a life, really. It was a lonely, when I say not much of a life, it was a lonely life.
But I mean, she used to, if Dad couldn't go up to the lighthouse and wind up the weights for some reason, she would do that. Or she'd draw the curtains around and, what else did she do? She did lots of things that the men could do. Remember at Cliffy Island, at the West Landing, when she had to man the winch there to winch the boat up out of the sea with several people. Did a lot of preserving if she could get fruit in Apollo Bay, which was pretty rare.
Always had to make her own bread and separate the milk and cream and grow veggies at some of the places we were at.
All the floors were linoleum.
Yes,
Mum used to keep them like mirrors, polishing like mad.
Hard yellow wax stuff for polished it.
Yes, and there was all the ways the stove to be attended to. The Navy used to, and the Air Force used to come at the weekend when we were here, and they would come during the week because they'd come to the office in the head keeper's place, which had, it was the proper
post office.
The post office, it was a proper post office. It had a plate on the outside, And she just did household duties, and she worked, operated the post office, and she milked cows, and she loved horse riding, did a lot of horse riding. She used to take mail and things over to George Adams.
Nearest sort of neighbour really was George Adams. He used to live at Gordon Vale, and there used to be 3 horses here. Doing the post office, we used to take the mail across to Gordon Vale on the horses. They used to do that every weekend on the horses and fall off and all that stuff. Dad he was in the army in the First War, came out of the army, and I think he went back to his father's grocery shop for a little bit, and then he joined the lighthouse. And but I mean, he could pull a motor down and fix a motor, he could pull a generator apart and fix a generator, he could paint a house, and they sort of learned to do everything because you had to be self-sufficient.
I don't know whether we had electric light, did we?
No.
No, I don't think so. Oh, just ride around on horses really, because we didn't have a car, not for a long time, not until... Oh, Dad bought that old Franklin, didn't he? Dad had bought, as I say, Uncle Frank bought this Franklin for Dad, and Mum went up to town and brought Bernice back in the Franklin.
Oh, that's right.
With Uncle Frank driving, and that Doug, what's his name?
Bradbury,
was it? No. Anyway, they were coming back down the ocean road and the wheel flew off, the back wheel. on one of the bends and went bounce, bounce, bounce. I didn't know this, but Mum told me. It went bounce, bounce, bounce down into the sea. And there was a little pin that held the wheel in, apparently, and they'd put it in the wrong way round. They got all the way down, and the scar was in the bitumen for years and years where the axle had dug in. Anyway, this dug stripped to his underpants, went down and dived in and got the tyre and the wheel, of course, dragged it back. They walked back along the road and they found the pin, whacked it in again and came down here. Dad had a Franklin. I cut my foot here badly once. I was no shoes on as usual. I was down near the top of the ramp down there. There was long grass and I trod on this beer bottle that had been broken. It was only the bottom of the bottle with all the jagged edges sticking out. And I trod on it and cut my foot. And I went hopping home to Mum. She said, "What have you done?" I said, "I cut my foot." She said, "Well, I've told you, wear shoes." And I said, "But I've cut it really bad." She said, "Let's have a look." I put my foot up and went squirt, and blood went everywhere. She grabbed a big white enamel dish, stuck my foot in it, ran and got a towel and wrapped it around it, made me put my foot up in the air. There was nobody here with a car. Dad, I don't know where he was. Anyway, she got on to Dad, and Dad went up to the Air Force, and the Air Force bloke got the Air Force truck out and drove it down to near where the milking shed was. And it was all boggy there, and didn't drive down here. And he came down, he's in that album, and carried me up to the Air Force truck and took Mum and I into Apollo Bay. Of course, I thought he was a real hero, you know, in his cap and his jacket and his white socks rolled over his flying boots for work. And anyway, the bush nurse there, she's going to stitch it up and cry. And I had to be real brave, you know, and not wince or anything, and she put stitches in my foot. And then the Air Force chap drove us back home and carried me down from the bog down to the house, and that was that. And I was in big trouble. God, I got told off. And then the Air Force had the dentists came to do all their teeth with a foot drill. And crikey, they did the Navy boys too, and they were up there in that house on the built-in veranda. It used to be built in. And Dad said, "Right," he said, "we're in the Commonwealth Services." He said to the Air Force and the Navy, could they do Max's teeth? Much to my horror, I said yes. Oh, and they said yes, and oh God, and I couldn't get away because of my foot. So Dad piggybacked me right up there, plonked me in the chair, and they revved away this thing. Oh, the agony, crikey. They drilled about 4 of my teeth and filled them up, and oh, crikey, for nothing. That's what Dad would be thinking. He didn't have to pay. We were in the lounge room here, and I was writing a letter to a girl, and Doug started taunting me, saying, "Hey, Max has got a girlfriend." He kept taunting me, and he ran, and I chased after him, and he shot around the doorway there, and I didn't know that he'd put his hand on the door jamb as he went around the corner, and I chased after him and I slammed the door on him to get rid of him, sort of thing, and I didn't know what I'd done. And he didn't yell out or anything, but he came around to the window there and he said, "You cut the finger off." And I said, "Serve you right." And then he held his finger up, and there was this bone sticking out at the end of his finger, and the rest of his finger was stuck up on the door jamb. I'll blow like hell, like most stations. One day, which has got nothing to do with now, I was down here with my mate Jack, and we were staying with the Uptons. It blew like hell, and one of their sons and I were down at the tower, and we hung onto the rail around the tower, and we let go our feet, and we were blowing straight out like that. I left with Mum and Dad in 1947.
Just at the end of the war, I left about 1945, I think. And I went to work in Apollo Bay. I was apprenticed to a carpenter in there, and I used to get 5 shillings a week, and I used to have to pay 7 and 6 a week board. Dad used to have to sub me for the 2 and 6.
I've always lived on the coastline. It's like the old sea dogs, you know, they learn, and it's a lot of the different areas and different lighthouses over the years. Watch my dad do weather reports. I've been doing it for more than 30 years now, so it's get used to it, and 9 times out of 10 we're pretty spot on. Well, we used to do it every 3 hours when I lived here in the head keeper's house when I was running the place. But now it's okay. We've got to do the visual odds. That's a cloud cover. There's 10 different types of cloud. There's 3 different heights. The different combinations, the different types of cloud, the direction, the heights, so all that's done visually. Same with the sea, the swell waves, the depths, the length of the swells. So we put all in a message, which I'll do in a minute, and we send it through the modem to Melbourne. So we do all the visual obs. There's also the computerised obs here, the minute updates. That can go through automatically wherever the Weather Bureau wants them. Normally Cup Day and Grand Final Day, it's going through every 60 seconds. They want to know what's happening down Western Victoria for the main events. But the visual obs are very important, and as I've spoken, this is a climate reference station, so that's one of the main stations in Victoria and Australia, because they're measuring climate change here. It's changed here since 1860 when they started. So actually, the first lighthouse I went to was Cape Otway down the New South Wales Victorian border. So we had 7 children. My mum had a baby, they moved us to a different one. So we finished up having 10. So we actually lived at Prom for a while, Wilson Promontory. And when we came here in 1958, November, we lived in this house and moved up to the Telegraph House. No one had lived there since World War II. So we lived up there because it was bigger, and we cleaned out all the snakes after a few months. And we lived there for 10 years. As I said, I first came here in 1958, and I know the place like the back of my hand, so I'm very passionate about it, and it's sort of my home. Brian, this is the state of the sea chart. You see here all the different types of seas we have. So this is featuring the pole in the Nelson era against the French. So it's a pretty old state of the sea chart. Today we work on the force of the sea by the wind direction, the average speed and the maximum. So today we're between a 3 and a force 4. Most days at Cape Otway it's normally around a force 6, 5 or 6, and we can get up to 10 and 11 at times in Bass Strait here. Bass Strait is very shallow, so it's a very dangerous area. Swell waves going every which way. And when we do the message, we put in a code form. It's an international weather code. Melbourne made it easier. and the computer spits it out in Melbourne in plain language over there. So that's how we send the message through. We get 6 to 8 vessels a day over 24 hours now. Even when I was a boy, many more. When we lived at Gabo and Prom, there was a lot more shipping because they were still using ships to transport coal from Newcastle to Melbourne, July.
There's someone up here, the gentleman.
Yeah, it's not me.
Let's go down there backwards, it's much safer.
What he done, he actually reversed light.
Ah, okay.
In the old days, light was always done by reflection.
So at that day I was a brickies labourer, so I left the wheelbarrow, went home, said to my wife, I said, I'll see you in 3 months, I've got a job at the Wilson's Promontory Lighthouse. I got off the helicopter and I just looked at the countryside, the coastline, the lichen on the rocks, and I just said to the guy that I just met, I'm home, I said, this is just like Flinders Island. We were transferred here to Cape Otway, that was in 1987, for the birth of our 3rd son. I worked here whilst she was in Geelong, and we were stationed here for quite a few months after the child was born. When he was big enough, we were transferred away again. From here we went to Cape Shank briefly, and then we went back up to Point Hicks where we'd been previously for a quick stint. That stint turned into 2 years. In between times I kept coming back to the Cape here to relieve usually every Christmas. The head keeper, Peter Scott, in those days always seemed to take holidays or time off around Christmas time. So we spent a lot of time here, the kids and I and the wife. We used to love to go down the Blanket Bay or the Fords Beach underneath the light here. We had little holes that we loved to go snorkeling in, and the boys always loved to whack their wetsuit on and go snorkeling rather than swimming. They were more into swimming in the rock holes and looking for abalone or a cray or something like that. So Cape Otway, we kept on coming back on and off until 91 when we were sent away, and I ended up being on Gabo Island for the last 2 years of my lighthouse keeper life as a true lighthouse keeper. That finished in 1995. So I've still been in lighthouses now for around 30 years. So while I'm here at Cape Otway, I take great pleasure in working mainly at the top of the lighthouse now, and talking to people as they come through, explaining to the tourists the history of the light, and that's from shipwrecks right through to coming up here and having a lovely cup of coffee.
Yeah, we arrived at Cape Otway Lightstation in the beginning of August 2003 to come and work here. When we arrived at the light station here, my job was the manager, to manage the whole precinct. It's now a tourism precinct where we get about 90,000 visitors a year. We've also got the retail shop, the whole maintenance of the precinct, the tours, the guiding aspect, the accommodation as well. So yeah, we're here to manage the Cape Otway Lightstation as a tourism precinct. So it's a totally different role to what lightkeepers had in the past. As in those days there wasn't many people at all that roamed around. Now we get 2, 3, 4, even up to 800 people a day wandering through here. So it's quite interesting but also quite challenging. And when we look back and read the old diaries and stories of the lightkeepers, we sometimes do it with envy because there's only one day a year when we have the place to ourselves, which is Christmas Day. So not only was the job itself challenging, but living out here, we had 4 children. These are the 2 youngest ones. And there was times when I'd have to cover the guides' lunches or breaks up in the lighthouse, and Angel was just a baby, so she'd come on the backpack and we'd go up to the lantern room and talk to visitors with Angel asleep on my back. And that was the easy times. There was other times when we'd come back from holiday and it'd be very stormy outside here, and on 3 occasions we lost 3 car doors that got bent in the wind because they just got swept away from the kids' arms. All our stuff would be blowing in the wind, and we'd come away after, or come back after a 3-day trip, and it's probably spent about 3 days picking up our belongings that are blown across Cape Otway here. All the kids went to school in Apollo Bay. The bus stop is only about 8-9 kilometres away, but we had to go through 3 gates at that stage, so opening and shutting the gates was a bit tedious. And it basically would take me 15 minutes to get there and 15 minutes to get back, so I was spending an hour just getting the kids to the bus. The best thing about living here certainly would have been the nights after 5 o'clock when we shut the gates, and in the summertime there'd be beautiful nights and we could let the kids run amok without being worried about upsetting the visitors, and they'd run around on their skateboards, we'd play tennis on the road or cricket on the road and just sit and watch the evening sky come and go and just think, oh well, there's plenty of worse places to live and work. The worst experience here, I must admit, is the wind. Before we came to here at Cape Otway, we all lived in the Highlands of Scotland, and it was one of the things that really got me down in Scotland was the wind. And then coming here, the wind just drives me nuts because it blows doors away, blows sheds away, blows fences down, and there's even been times when kids have been blown over and away, so we had to keep them inside, and often we had to keep them inside. And so that's probably the worst thing is the wind. We lived here for about 4.5, 5 years, so we still work here, and we've now been working here for over 11 years. But for the last 6 years we've been living in Apollo Bay.
I'd rather live in Apollo Bay because of the things that I want to do after school. I wouldn't be able to just go down the street or do something. I'd have to come home, or like I couldn't just go to a friend's house, and there's no phone reception at the end. So.
One of the things we didn't have TV. One of the things was we didn't have TV out here, and that was we chose not to have TV when we were living out here. And that was really interesting because the kids obviously, they watch DVDs and things like that, but when we went away on holiday from the lighthouse, it'd be interesting going to a hotel and watching TV. And I remember Angel especially, her favourite TV show would go off and the ads would come on, and she'd be screaming, where's Teletubbies gone, where's that gone, where's my TV show? And she'd be really upset that the ads were on, and then once the ads
they became
finished,
obsessed with ads.
Yeah.
Remember they used to memorise all the ads because they'd never seen ads? And they were just their favourite thing. They'd be like, oh, we need to buy this thing is great, look at it. And they'd be saying, oh Mum, have you ever heard of this product? You know, they've just become obsessed. It was really funny.
And then the ads, then after a while the ads would go off and you go, no, where's the ads gone? You know, where's the ads gone? No, I want to watch the ads. So
that was funny.
That was funny.
And they still do have a strange obsession. They just have a different perception to ads to what other children that have just always seen them all their life have been exposed to them. They were just very special. Emma used to always have to book a place with a television.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have TV? Oh well, we'll come and stay. If you don't have TV, we can't stay.
If we were living out here, it would be harder to play the sports that we want to play and like do all the things that we want to do after school and Apollo Bay and stuff. So if you wanted to like play sport, like we used to play badminton and we wouldn't finish till like 9:30ish, and then if we still lived out here and we wanted to play badminton, we wouldn't get home till like 10, probably later, so we wouldn't be able to play badminton, and it would be harder to play like netball and football and cricket and stuff like that.
Angel's always the one that would.
Yeah,
of all the kids now, Angel's the one that wants to come out and stay here the most, and she's always asking, well, when can we come and stay out there? And there's been a few funny things we've done after we've left, and you know, which includes running around the lighthouse at night when there's nobody there, and also abseiling down at one time. They abseiled down off the lighthouse one time, and Angel and Brooke and Ty, and Angel was the least fearful. She said, oh, I'll do that, and then Brooke and Ty went down as well, but Angel was first.
One of the main things that we did when it was really windy was we'd stand up on the top of the hill and like lean into it, and it would blow us back. And down at the bottom of the lighthouse, it's so windy and you can like run around and it would like push you, and then it would pull you back when you're walking. And so that was good. Like when we used to ride the motorbike down, and Dad would turn the lights on so you could see the lighthouse, and we just sit there and look at it. We built, I think we built lots of cubby houses. Main thing that we did after school and stuff, we just built, there was this path that we made down in one of the bushes, and we'd walk through there, and there'd be like heaps of these overgrown trees that sort of made cubbies of themselves, and then we just add stuff, and then take people in there. That was really fun, building cubbies.
They were very adjusted. They knew how they had to behave. They would know, Mum's working, shh. So they would know that they would switched on, didn't they? They were very good at that. And we still say it today. We still say, we're working just now, we're working tonight. You know, and they have to start behaving in that manner, and they'll all switch over. I was very busy with 4 little children, and I was also working as well, because there was always jobs for me to do. I've always been involved, so I've always worked. Lots of times I'd be in the office with a baby on my knee, one at my foot, answering the phone, and someone else going, "Can I have some tea, Mum?" at the door, and go, "Shh, shh, shh." You're trying to have a conversation with people. That was very common. Yeah. My official position here is assistant manager, so I think that means dog's body. Yeah, I think that's the case everywhere. Yeah, so I've always been involved with the banking. And then I've taken on, and always had to do whatever was needed and done throughout the time. I've taken on a more permanent position, be it by being assistant manager ever since really Angel's been at school, which is the past 5 years. So for the first 4 or 5 months when we came here, I didn't have a licence, I couldn't drive. So I was isolated, I was like a real lighthouse keeper's wife. I couldn't go anywhere without my husband taking me. That was fun. There was a few friends out in Cape Otway, so we did have friends that would come and visit, but no, not from time. We'd have the odd friend that would come out for dinner, and we do have another couple of friends that live remotely as well, so they were used to it. Yeah, but no, it's not the same. You can't pop out for dinner. We never did that.
Logistical exercise.
Yeah, yeah, and too many children as well. When you've got 4 children into the bargain, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's just, if I was going into Apollo Bay, if I had to collect, say, Angel from Kinder, and then the kids wouldn't finish school till 3 hours later, so I couldn't come back out again and go back because it just was no time to do that. So we'd hang out, sometimes in cafes, sometimes at friends' house. I spent a lot of time killing time, going for walks, playing on the beach. We did have some good times, but there was lots of times killing time. Yeah. And difficult because we wanted to do sports and activities after school. Yeah, look, we were probably very lucky living here, because if I forgot to buy milk or we ran out of milk, we had a cafe, a fully stocked cafe, so it was always handy. We were very lucky. What was the best thing?
Yeah, what was the best thing?
I didn't really like work living here. It was hard. We lived hard, although it was a lot easier than a lot of people. Well, we had 2 bedrooms with 3 kids in 1 bedroom. We had no storage. We had mice regularly running around the house. It was really difficult to keep them down. Now we have better things in place and we don't have a mouse problem. Always having to travel, always hanging around, always working.
I would like to live at the lighthouse again and live how the lightkeepers would live, and just maybe live here for a year and just be homeschooled and see how it's like to live with no electricity or anything, or maybe lights, but no
candles. We could have candlelight.
Yeah.